All right, everybody. We got another very special guest for y'all. Everybody, please welcome to the show, Mark, Maia. Welcome, Mark.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time out of your Easter Sunday.
I got
Oh, there you go. Nice.
finger puppets.
Yeah, finger puppets. Very festive for the day. I mean, we can just sit here and do that. We don't have to talk. I don't care.
Yeah, we'll just do a puppet show. Like I'm surrounded by I got a bunny.
Oh, nice. There you go.
I'm just surrounded by Easter things. I got a bunch of crayons for my kid that was
Oh, nice.
He was coloring in his
The one thing I miss about Easter is the every year, well, no matter what basket we got, always came with that really crappy like paddle ball that would break after like an hour. They always mass produce those around Easter time. You'd have a wooden paddle with the rubber ball, and I'd like play with it, and it'd snap within the hour. And I'm like, man, I kind of miss getting one of those.
I was so bad at that. I never played with it long enough for anything to snap.
I think I wasn't good either. I would just like rip it off and throw it or some shit.
But I snapped way before that cord ever did. I was like, fuck this, and just gone
out of here.
So,
see, I was a weird kid because we got that basket full of candy and everything, but I just wanted the hard-boiled eggs.
Yeah, that's weird, dude.
Like that was like the only time of year Mom made hard-boiled eggs, and I fucking love hard-boiled eggs.
You're like, oh man, who wants Cadbury eggs if there's hard-boiled?
Yeah, man. Gotta get that protein, baby.
I come from an old school European Portuguese family, so they didn't do anything for Easter other than I think they donated money and so any cool kid things as a kid, whatever school did. So I never did. My parents never did anything for me. There was never Easter egg hunts.
Yeah. Dude, my ex, she had 2 boys, and like the whole thing with that was like, for me, Easter was like, you got the basket, we had a ham dinner, there was hard-boiled eggs. Like that was Easter.
That was it.
She had this whole thing about like, well, you gotta get presents for Easter. And it blew my fucking mind, dude. I'm like, I gotta get presents for this thing, I get presents for that thing. When do the presents end? Not to mention that everybody's birthday was an Easter. Both the kids and her birthday were in Easter.
I think the best part about Easter is you don't have to wrap the gifts. You just put them in a plastic bag.
Yeah, I was like, when do the presents stop?
No, never. They never stop.
I felt like Jerry Seinfeld for a minute. Like, come on.
All right, Mark. Thanks for being here. We don't need to talk about Easter all day, but
it's just the Easter podcast.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're gonna talk about so-called living in a second here, but we need to know your origin story for comics because this is your first time in the show, and we got to put you through that stupid gauntlet. Of how you got into comics.
How I got into comics?
Yeah.
Well, this being my first story, it's a short story.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to I started collecting comics since I was 13. And I've always wanted to get into comics. When I first started, I thought I'd get in as an illustrator, but sequential art wasn't really my thing. And so I kind of gave up on that dream. But I gave up on that when I was 15 years old, never thinking that comics was something I could actually do not because I didn't think I could do it. I just didn't think that was a job that normal people got. I thought that was just like, oh, there's comic book writers. It's a different class of people. Like there's, there's actors and comic book people and billionaires, whatever. Like just class of people. I was like, I'm just not in those. I'm not in those groups. It's not going to happen for me.
Leo DiCaprio, Elon Musk, Jason Aaron.
Yeah. So anyways, I gave up on that for a while. Then I thought, oh, maybe I'll try it as a writer. And then I wrote a script, like So-Called Living. I actually wrote the script for it like 15 or 16 years ago.
Wow.
And I tried to get an artist, but the way I tried to get an artist before was like, I have a lot of artist friends that are artists. So I was like, do you want to just do something together? And a lot of them said yes. And then they bow out. So I was like, okay, let me try a different way to do this. Let me, I'll change the split on this. Basically, if the comic book that we make makes any money, I'll take the first bit to get me to zero. Like I'll cover the cost of printing. So I just take enough back to cover the cost of printing. And then the first like $5,000 it makes is all yours. And then from then on, we split the profits 50-50. And they were like, yeah, sure, let's do that. And then they did for a while, and they stopped because all the people I knew to ask, they were full-time artists. And then at night, they didn't want to go home and do it again. Like they want to break. So that always fell through. So then I put the script away for like 15 years. And then I decided, You know what? I'm just going to treat this as like an employer-employee venture. I'm just going to go out, look for artists, find a portfolio I like, the artist that fits my story,
Mhm.
and I'm just going to pay them outright, have them sign a contract saying like everything you do, I own the story, I have the rights to everything, and I pay you. The thing
Mhm.
is, you're guaranteed getting paid as an artist, which is great, and
Right.
there's benefit to that, obviously. So I was like, you're going to get paid. So whether the books makes anything or not, it doesn't matter. Right now, the book's not making anything; it gets funded,
Right.
but still, it hasn't made enough for me to cover the costs that I've sunk into it already.
Mhm.
So yeah, that was the deal, and that worked out, and that's where I found Marco
Okay.
Leona, who does the illustrations.
And up until that point, I mean, what were you working on before comics? I mean, you had writing experience and stuff like that.
I was working in the video game industry for 24 years.
Oh wow.
So I did everything in the video game industry except for programming and
Mhm.
music. So like I did background painting, animation, story writing, video game design. I was a creative director and art director for the majority of my career.
Mhm.
So I did a lot of that, and then I always wanted, but again, I fell into that because
Yeah.
video games is another thing. I thought I was like, I don't know how real people get that job, but a buddy of
Me either.
mine,
Yeah.
got a job in the video game industry, and they were like, "Do you know any animators?" And they're like, "Well," he was like, "Well, I only know one that I would recommend." So they called me,
Yep.
and they offered. They said they hadn't come down for a 2-day trial. I did, and then they offered me the job right away.
Wow. That's
So
amazing.
I was like, oh, okay, cool. So then I've been in the industry ever since. So it's been like 24 years.
So Mike and I are big game fans. So
Yeah.
what have you worked on that we might know about?
Well, I was gonna drop the name Destroy All Humans because that's a pretty big
Oh, you worked on Destroy All Humans?
We did the mobile game for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was before iPhone, so it was like for the Razor.
Wow, that's for the Razor. Oh my god.
Or like Sony Ericsson's, whatever.
Holy crap.
So we did that. I did. I also worked on Battlefield 2 and Battlefield Vietnam. So those are big titles.
Okay. Cool. Yeah.
We designed, again, before iPhone. We designed 24. Actually, I designed 24. I wrote it, and I did all the art for the mobile game for 24.
That's crazy.
It won a BAFTA.
Wow, the mobile game.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
So
that's awesome.
that was good. And then the articles for it, like IGN, I think gave it a. I can't remember which one because we did part 1 and 2, but one of them they gave a 9, the other one they gave a 9.2. And for the first one, they said, "Oh, this is how you do a video game based on an IP."
Yeah, great.
And we did it in like 4 months.
Wow.
And the writers of 24 got all the credit for the script, which they didn't do. I did. So that was nice.
Yeah.
The publisher who was about to get fired if we didn't do a good job on this because he screwed the pooch on the project.
Oh, no.
And I can tell this now because he's a bit of a dick. So if he's watching this, he knows.
Amazing.
He took the credit for everything. He'd be on articles being like, "Yep, this is the game I've always wanted to do." I was like, "You're such a lying piece of shit." I was like, the game you wanted to do back when phones were like flip phones were your latest and greatest. Was the game they had a document for was something that the Xbox at the time couldn't have pulled off.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, what? They had like real-time streaming events and cases uploading. I was like, what? What phone are you working on?
What are you going to be Are you from the future? Because that's not going to run on shit.
Yeah, so...
that's wild, dude.
Me and the programmer, we looked through the original doc, and he's like, because after we made the pitch, and I had to fly over to LA, talk to the guys at Fox, convince them to let us do it, because this guy's already screwed up by letting another studio do it. And me and the programmer are looking through the document. He's like, "Hey, read this. Is there anything you could do on this?" And we're reading it in the office together, on our computers. And we're just outright laughing, being like, what is this? What is this live action streaming video? When has this guy ever seen this happen?
That's wild.
That would have been brutal. Anyways.
And on the other side of that, I mean, doing the research on you have a board game channel, right? Yeah. So you're pretty passionate about all that stuff. If you want to talk about that a little bit before we jump into comic.
Yeah, I have a board game channel called Board Game Coffee, and it specializes in how to play videos, review videos, previews, playthroughs, etc. Some unboxings, and we've been doing that for about 6 years, I think. And it started off because I wanted to design, because although I'm a video game designer, I don't come at it from a programmer, so I don't know how to program my own games.
Mhm.
I work with programmers. So I write the documents, tell them what to do, and they do it. I sit beside them and we're like, okay, tweak this, tweak that, tweak this, tweak that.
Mhm.
But when it comes to board games, I thought, hey, I could design a board game on my own because I can make my own prototype components, design my own mechanics.
Mhm.
So I started doing that, and then my wife was like, hey, let's do a channel where you teach people how to play board games. And I was like, no, I don't want to do it. I was like, I don't want to do it because I don't want the attention.
Right.
I didn't like that constant, like, people are watching you directly.
Right.
So it took me a while to get used to that. And one day I was listening to a podcast, and they were like, if you want to get into board games, you want to fund on Kickstarter, then you're going to have to get into the community. And then one day she comes home again. She's like, hey, let's do this. And I was like, all right, I need to get into the community. So put the board game aside, start out Board Game Coffee. And I never went back to the board game design again. I want to. So, but I haven't done it yet, because now that I've got a name in the community, it might help the Kickstarter.
Yeah, right. I mean, I'm looking at your Board Game Coffee channel, and it's super popular. There's some games on there that I've been looking to play that I haven't had the time to learn. I play a lot of different TCGs and stuff like that. So that's really cool to see that it's really taken off, and you have a pretty big following. So that's awesome.
Yeah. And it's interesting because the following's been growing more since I've put out less content in the last like 2 months. Because I was burnt out. I did, if you look at last few videos, well, I've put out some since, but there was I put out like 6 how to plays for Mythwind, and then I put out 2 how to plays for Tenaris, and those were pretty much back to back. So it was like 8 how to play videos, and they were these huge games, super in depth. And I put a lot of work into how to play videos. If you look at them, there's a lot of animations, there's special effects, there's transitions, there's a lot of work. It's not just me talking in front of a table.
Yep.
And by the time I was done those, I was like, I am burnt out, and I had to get this done before Christmas or December, because once December hits, it's like, it's birthdays. You said around Easter time was a lot of birthdays for you. December is I'm eating like 3 birthday cakes a week, and then there's Christmas, and then there's like my Christmas at my wife's family, and she's got like 2, because her parents separated, so there's 2 families. And then we have to come to Toronto for my family, and my family's like, it's a 20-person core.
Yep.
So there's always 20 people. It's a huge family, so there's plenty more, but everybody had to segregate because we couldn't do it. It would be 300 people at every event.
That's wild.
So it's basically it's done. So December starts and my years are right off.
Yeah.
So I can't get anything done.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, congrats. It's a lot of work. I know how in-depth those games are, like Mythwind, especially Frosthaven, those types of games. So to like make the content, to play them, teach them, and then edit all that stuff, it's quite a bit of time.
Yeah.
And I got a toddler.
Yeah, that's quite a bit of time. All right, so we're gonna get into the comics now. So-Called Living is on Kickstarter right now. It's hit its funding goal, but for sure, I mean, it has almost a month to go still. So congrats on that. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it hit it in like about 30 hours, which was exciting. 33 hours, something like that.
Not bad for your first Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And Mike, I wanted to just read this little piece from the Kickstarter, and you tell me if you think I was going to back this book or not.
Okay.
So-Called Living is a dark comedy.
It's like the rabbit speaking to us.
That takes place in a reality where vampires, werewolves, zombies, and us normies coexist in a world much like our own. Just end there. Am I backing this book?
Yeah, for sure. That's right up Chris's alley. Those are like the 3 main monsters he loves to read about. So give us the rundown. I know you talked about how you had the script for a long time, but what is this story about?
Yeah, so the world exists, and like you said, it's a world where, like, what if the vampires, werewolves, and zombies kind of lived among us, right? And not necessarily, not in hiding. They live among us as part of our everyday lives, and it's not an apocalypse. So we've adapted, we've grown with them. So there are vampires, but they're still vampires. They still follow vampire rules. They still want to suck your blood. They still, but then there's others that they're good to just like go to the bar and order like blood shots or whatever, and not have to kill people. But there's obviously the ones that do, because there's humans that do things humans that do things they're not supposed to do either.
Right.
But the personality of these creatures and how we respond to them is different because we've grown up in a world where they always existed.
Mhm.
So our societies kind of grew in parallel. So there's not this like, oh my God, it's a vampire. It's like, oh, it's a vampire. They might be dangerous. That's true. But coming across a vampire in an alleyway would be like coming across some like gangbanger in an alleyway. You're like, you
Mhm.
got to make the judgment call. Do you think you can take them? Do you
Right.
just going to play it cool? Like you're not frightened a little bit. So, and then there's racism that they deal with, where there's just some people that are against werewolves or against vampires because
Mhm.
just they're against those type of people or beings.
Mhm.
And our story, and I'll tell you the get into the first book. The first book Jack starts off as a human, and he gets turned into a vampire, and then his life is amazing to begin with, and he's just an average Joe, right? He's
Mhm.
cool amongst his friends. He's not a standout type of person, but he gets turned into a vampire. Now he's got to adapt to this new way of living as a vampire. So the first thing that happens to him is it starts off mundane things that he has to deal with. Like, I can't get into my apartment complex because there's like a no vampire clause, and if you're not invited in, then you can't go in.
Oh yeah, you
Because
have to
it's
invite
a
the
vampire. So he
right.
can't get into his own apartment. So he's a homeless vampire. That's the first. It's the first problem he comes across.
That's awesome.
So, like, you can read the first book for free. There's a link on the Kickstarter page. It'll take you right there.
Wow.
Because I wanted to give people a sense of like what the world is like, what I'm like as a writer. It gives us the characters.
Mhm.
And the first book is pretty tame, and then the second book introduces a bunch of other characters, and it leaves off on like Jack is going to get in over his head. Jack's our main character. He's our
Mhm.
human. So his little mundane issues where he thinks, now I got to adapt to being a vampire. My life's all turned upside down. What do I do? And then there's this subplot happening in the background that he's totally unaware of, but he's the focus of, which you start seeing a bit of that in issue 2, which that's the cover for issue 2 in the center there, actually, with his head on fire.
Oh yeah.
In the background of our
yeah,
page.
in the background there. Nice.
So yeah, these are the first few pages of issue 1, and I think it's the first 5 pages. And at the bottom of that, there's a link where you can go read the rest of issue 1.
That's very cool.
There.
And the Kickstarter's for issues 1 and 2.
That's awesome.
So,
and what you're off. Let's just talk about the backer. The rewards that you have for people. You have some standard covers. You have some variant covers, elite covers, sex pot covers. Sorry, not sexy covers. So
obligatory. They're obligatory sex pot editions.
Yeah, obligatory. And I just a shout out to the artist. You said it was Mark Leone.
Mark Leona, yeah.
Leona, yeah. And he said he started working with him. Just give him a shout out for those awesome covers too.
Marco Leone is awesome.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I'll take you through. And if you notice, there's a bunny motif throughout the whole page.
Mhm.
You notice the perimeter. Yeah. So bunnies are hinted at in the first book, and that's something that's new and different for people to. That's kind of like the big surprise in the beginning. You're going to read the first 2 books. And you're like, what's with the bunnies? You don't know much about the bunnies as a reader, but you get the sense that people in the world very much know about the bunnies and the problem with the bunnies.
Okay.
So that's another story that's happening along Jack's. So eventually they will converge. But these are the elite covers. So the elite covers are produced by the first variant, the one that's purple. It's got Jack running toward us. That is drawn by Derek Loffman, who's a friend of mine, and he's done work for Marvel. He's designed toy lines. He's got a huge following on Instagram. If you look at Derek Loffman, he's done a lot of stuff. He's designed. I don't know if you ever saw those. They're like little chibi toys. They're like Captain America. You pop their heads down, and the eyes switch.
Yep.
Yes. He designed that line of toys.
Oh, that's really cool. Wow.
So he's done a lot of stuff for like a lot of big IPs, and he's a friend of mine. And he lives in London, Ontario, which is where I live now.
Nice.
And so he drew that cover for me. And then the other cover, which is actually a shot of Toronto, that is a guy I've known since he was 10. And he is a very popular photographer in Toronto. And he goes by Ashton Techno. His full name's Ashton Prasad. So Ashton Techno Prasad, I think, is what I credit him as. But he's got an Instagram following that's pretty popular as well. He gets flown out to Paris and New York for galleries to take photographies of their cities, and he's really good. So
that's a real photograph cover.
Yeah, that's a real photograph cover.
It almost like I almost didn't. The way the color is and the lighting, you almost can't tell. Like looking at it, it's a really cool idea to put that.
And because I figured since like Toronto's my hometown, it's where I am right now, that I wanted to kind of pay homage and also at the same time kind of share Ashton's work because he's a fantastic photographer. So.
And that's one of those things, like, I'm sure somebody's done it before, but I can't think of anybody that's done a photo cover before. So it's kind of cool.
Which is, it's really cool. And then we have the sex pot covers, which I'm actually interested in because I see you do comment on one of the covers you made generating with AI that you edited and stuff like that. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So the first cover, for the variant for issue 1, which is the one that's clearly not hand drawn. That is that's the one I used AI for. I can't remember the name of the system I used, but it was like a service I paid for, and it's a little more than just like text generated. I imported photos I took of like girls in poses, and then I chopped it up, included drawings. So basically, I made this hodgepodge thing of like drawings of mine, photos I took,
like a Frankenstein.
So and then you pump all this information into your system of like photos I used, drawings I did, and it pumped out this image.
Wow.
And so if you the reason behind these is why it has a badge that says obligatory sex pot edition. If you look at Kickstarter, it's most of the best funding comics are like sexy comics.
Oh, we know. Yeah, we've talked about this all the time. Yep.
So I was like, and I was talking to my wife and I was like, I studied like what web pages do, like what Kickstarter pages with that do well. What do they look like? How many tiers do Kickstarter pages have? And I'm not just looking at comics. And then I'm looking at but I am looking specifically at comics for like what kind of books fund. And I'm seeing so much of the funding is for sexy books. And I'm like, wow, we have a good story. We have a good solid story. I'm confident in that. But we do not have a sexy story.
Right.
We have great characters. But the sexy part of it, I was telling my wife, I was like, I don't know what we're gonna do. Then it clicked in. I was like, we're gonna take it. If you ever gone to a con and you'll see like girls dress up as like sexy Mario or sexy Luigi or sexy SpongeBob, right? So we took that idea and we pulled Jill.
Sexy SpongeBob.
Oh, it exists, Chris.
So
to be fair, I was at a con one time and they had sexy Mega Man, and there was very confused thoughts in my head. But go ahead.
So we took 2 characters from either book. The first book is Jill, who you can see her actually in the first 5 pages if you scroll up. She's wearing like a pink top, but it's like, right up to here. It's got like long sleeves. She's wearing blue jeans and she's got a ponytail. So so what we took from that is like, okay, Jill's got a pink top, check. She's wearing denim bottoms, check. And a ponytail, check. And she orders a milkshake, so she's holding a milkshake. So we took that, we made a sexified version of Jill as how cosplayers would sexify Mario. So that's what we did. And we did the same thing for the other character, but this is drawn by a friend of mine called Jamie Reel. Now Jamie works in the video game industry, fantastic artist as well. He's not used to doing sexy images. But I was like, hey Jamie, I want to do a cover for me? He's like, sure.
How'd that conversation go?
And I was like, I want you to do the sex pot editions. He's like, what? And I explained to him my mentality. I was like, we need a sexy cover. And he's like, fine. He's like, figures, get me to do the sex, because he's doing it. He's got these concepts. And he's like, I'm struggling with this. I was like, you got this, buddy. You got this. So he took the waitress that's in book 2. And the waitress, she's like up to here. She's a very like plain Jane looking. You wouldn't look at her twice. Right. And we sexified her and again and put her on the cover. And the badge.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, the badge was a kind of tongue-in-cheek way of saying if you want to be successful on Kickstarter, you got to have your obligatory sex pot covers.
Oh my god. Yeah, and I was gonna say that like you pull up Kickstarter all the time, and it's like these are the types of covers you see on like the projects we love that are like
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands of dollars. But it is funny because Chris and I always have a conversation in the background, and I think we've only really had one out of the 300 something interviews. We really had one interview that was like, okay, this person is putting these, we call them cheesecake covers, out that aren't really related to the story in somewhat of a way, and we had asked them that in an interview, and it kind of went like, oh no, I don't see that at all, these are just like great covers. And I was like, but there's definitely, you're making the money off it, but like to hear you say that, I was like, okay, there's a realization there that like, yeah, people are just going to pay money for these covers.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to put the badge on it, because I wanted people to know, like, I am very aware of what we're doing here.
Oh yeah, and I think it's hilarious. Yeah, I love it.
And it plays in with the humor of the book, because the humor of the book, like it's got serious situations, but it's the way they deal with the situations, and it's very sarcastic, and they mock each other, and it's the way I talk to my friends, so it's kind of rolls off the tongue.
Right. Yeah.
I remember thinking when I saw it, because Mike and I we're generally not fans of like cheesecake covers or just that style of book in general. Like I've tried a few, it's just not my thing. And when I saw this, I was like, okay, par for the course. I get playing the game, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And to hear you put it that way with the obligatory stamp on it and everything, it almost makes me want to buy them just to be like, yeah, he gets it. And at least he's like kind of being a little punk rock about it. And like, well, I got to do it. But, it's just,
the satire of it's amazing. Yeah, I think that's the best approach.
I'm glad you guys got it, because like I've showed it to a lot of people. And they're like, why the sexy covers? I was like, didn't you see just friends of mine? I was like, did you see the badge?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, obligatory. And they just read it like it's a thing. And then I've had some other friends that read it and they laugh out loud.
Oh yeah,
obligatory sex bed edition. That's because they got it. They got it right away without me telling.
I did want to dig a little bit into that issue 1 cover though. Have you gotten any backlash for the use of AI? Because I know it's a big conversation and
not yet. I did. It's funny. I was doing ads and I used and I put out ads, a bunch of ads, like 12 ads, different ads that were different images that I pulled from the comic and I spliced them together. And then one ad, I was like, I want just a person sitting on a bus reading this casually, or like a subway, reading the comic book casually. I wanted to do kind of like, but I had no comic books to use. So I was like, oh, I'll just get some stock photography of somebody sitting down. I'll put it in their hand. And I couldn't find anybody reading anything that wasn't like a novel or that was in a setting that I wanted. So I was like, I'm just going to go ChatGPT and go like, woman sitting on bus or subway reading a comic. And I got it. So I was like, okay, I photoshopped my comic book into there. I put it out, put the so-called living on it. And everybody would just smash that ad. And they were like, why not use the art? And I was like, here's an interesting thing. I was like, I have 12 ads out for this. One of them uses AI. The AI one gets all the likes, it gets all the shares, it gets all the attention, and you commenting on it is going to make Facebook promote it even more, because they don't care if the comments are bad or negative.
Right.
So I was
people are talking about it. Yeah.
And then people are like, well, why don't you pay an artist? I was like, I paid an artist to do the entire book. I'm broke.
Yeah.
But that's why I need Kickstarter. I was like, Marco got paid up front for every bit of art he did, so I'd have something to put on here. Like I would have loved to fund it first and then pay him and then pay for this, but it was like, I need to show something. So I paid Marco up front. So, and I was trying to tell him, I was like, I understand, but I was like, this is a piece of artwork that's like the ad. I was like, it's a piece of throwaway artwork. Like nobody's ever going to see it again. It's this ad run for 2 weeks and it's gone. I was like, I'm not going to pay somebody $700 that I don't have to make this ad that's just gone. And I was like, if you think about it, you're not paying. If you pay me because that ad brought you to it, the money is going to me and Marco, the actual writer and the artist. Like it's going to real people. Right. We're just using the AI to attract people.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I just want to say, like, that backlash, it's more suited for, like, when I see the shit happening at Wizards of the Coast, big companies like Blizzard, like any type of big development company that could pay an artist to do any little bit of ad work. Yeah, I understand. Like, for sure, they need to dish it out. But I think in your situation with the AI for an ad, like you said, for 2 weeks, and it does include the comic book art.
Yeah.
And also at the bottom of the Kickstarter, if anybody's curious, you do have a statement about AI generated art.
Yeah.
And Kickstarter's policies on it. If people are pretty interested in reading more about that, but
And the thing is, I've told people, I was like, you don't have to buy the AI generated one.
Mm-hmm.
And boycotting the entire project because of one cover, I was like, well, you're still like, I still did all the writing. I did a lot of work into this.
Right.
Marco did tons of work into this.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, you're still like negating like the stuff we did.
Mm-hmm.
Like that doesn't erase the amount of work we did.
Right.
And I just wanted to do, because like a lot of the sexy covers that are on Kickstarter are AI. So I thought that kind of rolled into the whole sexy cover thing. I was like, I'll just do one.
Yeah.
And so I actually might draw, I was thinking for books 3 and 4, I might draw my own sex pod edition and see how that goes out. So
well, I mean, you're number one, you're not hiding it, which is always seems to be the issue with the AI stuff. Number two, and I think it's such a weird gray area right now that each instance has to be just looked at differently in how the art's being used and who's getting the credit, right? I think it's just such a weird area to be in right now.
It sounds to me like you used it in the correct way, which
was for sure
a tool used. Like it wasn't like you. I mean, the actual cover. I know you said you went into ChatGPT for the ad, but for the cover, it's like you used as a tool along with a bunch of work. It wasn't like you typed this in and this is what popped out.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So, and I did that on purpose because I was like, I feel like I need to put something into this. So if people do ask, it's like, well, I did do something. It's this combination of like me and AI working together.
Cool.
Yeah, which I was listening to a bunch of people who use like Photoshop and other like people who make like some of the top creators on YouTube and everything. They're making their thumbnails and everything there. And they use these tools and they're like, well, it's not AI. And then they describe it. And I'm like, no, it's AI.
It's still
just because you're not typing it into a prompt in and something comes up doesn't mean it's not AI. Like, we got to find this. Yeah. But I was curious because, I see everybody going off about it. And it's always funny to me. And when something becomes a hot button topic, there's no nuance to the conversation. It's black and white, good and bad.
Yep.
That's
the tough part about it.
And I have like I guess friends of mine that do run Kickstarters, and they're like, we don't like, and they're professional artists, and they're like, personally, I don't care. They're like, and especially in this situation, because it's not something like I didn't take money away from somebody. You know what I mean? Like I get it with the big companies. You're like, you're not paying. You could be paying an artist for that. I was like, no, I couldn't.
Right?
No, I couldn't have paid an artist for it.
Yeah.
I am broke.
Yep.
And then the idea of like, oh well, you shouldn't do it. Then I should just give up on it because I'm broke and just give all the advantages to the rich people.
Right. Yeah.
No.
Like that doesn't seem right either.
No, I totally understand the situation. Like Chris said, I think you utilized it perfectly. I mean, there's a tool out there for people to use. And why not? And I think the one we haven't talked about here, the last reward is the all-in reward, which seems to be pretty popular, and that includes every cover, right?
Yeah, you get every cover, and I honestly thought the sex pot would do better than this one on its own, but a lot of people are getting the all in.
Yeah, it seems to be the most backed, right? That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's
so
awesome.
Like, that's awesome. Yeah. So I guess this, people are still getting the sex pot edition, but so it's great that people are supporting that, and I also have, if you scroll down, I've got some add-ons.
Oh, very cool.
And the add-ons I used was like, and this is a tip I got from my friend who he's a lot more successful on Kickstarter than I am. He's done them before, and where he's made up to like 85,000 on his book or whatever. So he's done well. And he suggested, because I was like, do you sign all your books? He's like, no. He's like, I put a add-on tier. If somebody, because it helps you support your book if they want it, and then you don't have to sign all your books. He's like, because that's a lot of work to just go through, because you're already organizing, you're printing out labels, you're putting them in boxes. You're like, there's a lot of, because I don't have a fulfillment center. I am my own fulfillment center. So, so they said do that, and I was like, okay, and that'll help actually like fund the project. So the add-ons are like, and like if I'm at a show, I'll sign your book for free. I'm not gonna ask you for $5. I need the $5 to help you fund this project. And then the keychain, we actually make those keychains ourselves in our house. So they're black and white acrylic, and I don't have one with me. I should have brought it. They're about that big, and they're black and white acrylic. And on the back of them, it says "So-called living, official member of the Blood Bunny Colony." And the idea is, for $8, not only do you get a cool keychain, but on future so-called living Kickstarters, I want to offer something special to people who are backers, kind of like being a Costco member. There's going to be benefits if you're a Costco member. So I want to give some benefits to people who supported me in this project and the future projects if they got this keychain. So that means your email, whatever you backed us with, and you got the keychain, your email is going to go on a list. That list is going to be like, these are our Blood Bunny members. And then the future Kickstarter, we're going to figure out some bonus. Either you're going to get a free print, free stickers, maybe a discount, maybe a free upgrade on your package. Like we'll figure something out to give them in addition. So you're going to get the keychain minimum. You're going to get a handmade keychain by us. And the keychain looks pretty much exactly like it does there.
Okay. That's cool. Really cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And then, we just added if anybody wants additional backer levels, they could. And actually somebody bought 3 all-ins.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well, Mark, it's funded, but yeah, we have some additional things people can add on here that I think are really cool. To me, it looks like the project's going to be a huge success with almost a month to go. That's amazing. I know Chris read Zombies, Vampires, Werewolves, and was like already backing it.
Yeah. And then you add in dark humor, and it's like, I'm a big fan of dark humor, so let's go.
Is there anything else you want to say about the book before we, sign off today? Or
well, let me see. Well, if anybody wants to read issue 1 for free and to get an idea of my writing and the characters, go to Global Comics. Just type in So-Called Living.
Okay.
And you'll get it there. And a lot of these, like the Elite and the Sexpot covers, are limited edition. So the only thing they're limited to Kickstarter. But if I have any overrun, then those will be with me. I'll sell those at a show. Right. Like they'll probably never show up on Kickstarter again. They'll just be with me at a show. And I mentioned that in the bottom. I say exclusive-ish, and the ish is like if I have any extra left over after I do the print run, because I'm doing the offset printing, so they have overrun issues. So if there's like an extra 20 issues, well, I'll take those with me to a show and sell them there.
Okay.
So cool. I just want to be as open as possible with everybody, but I'm confident you'll like it. The stress I have over this was never will people like it, is will people find it? Because there's so many things on Kickstarter.
That's true. There's a lot out there. Yeah, that's great. And if anybody wants to follow you and your social medias and stuff, where do you want to send them for that?
Oh, well, I have 2. Okay. Board Game Coffee is my board game channel, and that's YouTube and Instagram are our biggest channels, but you can look up Board Game Coffee on anything and it'll be us. And same goes for So-Called Living. We just have an Instagram right now and a Facebook page, but because I've been so busy with the Kickstarter, I haven't really done much with either of those. I want to do more with them, but I've just been so focused on making sure everything runs smooth with the Kickstarter and putting the page together.
Understandable. Yeah,
definitely. And to everybody out there watching or listening, you know the drill. There's links in the show notes down below. I'll link to the Kickstarter page, also to the free comic that you can read before you check out the Kickstarter page. So, if you like it or not. That's always cool. Free comics.
Yeah.
And also to Mark's YouTube channel. So, Mark, thanks so much for taking the time today, stopping by and chatting. We appreciate it. And best of luck with the rest of the campaign, man.
You guys are awesome. Thanks for having me on. And thank you.
Thank you.